Hello again, everyone. Deflect here, Firm at Fair Gaming. Came to bring you the version we did of Melee of the 0 to 15 groups, but for the range this time. Again, I'll go over the criteria. This is going to be the best spec for what I consider range, and this is going to be 0 to 15 keys because that's what 98% of the runs are, and it is not going to be based on if another spec in your class is good. It's based solely on this class. It's going to be on ease of play because that's a big factor on 0 to 15. You could have a hard spec, and a lot of people aren't going to crank out the same DPS, and it's going to be based on utility and their damage they're doing. So that's what we're basing it on. 0 to 15 keys, where the majority play, and let's get into it. Affliction Lock. Well, we'll just put that one right there. It's a lot. This is where it used to be throughout all of Dragonflight, and it's now just gone bang with the tuning. It has some pretty good utility. The Imp Dispel is going to be phenomenal. The fact that it's cranking damage is just incredible, and it's gone a 180 swing. So it's basically Assassination Rogue and Affliction Lock were a couple of the worst specs, and now they're the best specs pretty much in the game right now. So it's nice to see Blizzard tune them up to make them playable and will be usable again. And for most Warlocks, Affliction is usually their favorite spec anyway, so it's a good thing. Arcane. Now, Arcane has had some damage or changes. Arcane has great utility. I would say even better utility than the Warlock. Warlock brings Cookie's Gate, Imp Dispel, but Arcane Mage brings Blast Wave. They bring Frost Nova. They bring Poly, Interrupt, their raid buff. They just bring a lot as a mage. You always bring a lot. You can ice block or you can choose the DR. It's a very good spec, and it's pumping damage. It's gotten a lot easier. There still is some nuances to it, but it has gotten a lot easier, and it is definitely up there in the S tier right now. Balance Druid. Now, as every X pack, Druids are the worst doomers in the world. I understand it's not really fun right now. I get that point, but they always complain until their damage gets buffed and buffed and buffed. They're actually not doing terrible damage. Although it's not as fun to play as other iterations of Boomkin, it's still doing very decent damage. You are a little squishier than most, but you can go bear form, which again stops your DPS. And yes, it's a whole snowball effect after that, but it still is a possibility. And for that reason, Boomkin is still doing some good damage. They are going B tier, even though, they're a little less fun to play than a lot of the others. Demo Warlock. Demo Lock. How do I rank this one? It's good damage. It's fun to play. Like, I enjoy the spec. It's just really fun to send out, dogs and then imps and all that fun stuff. It has again Warlock utility. I just don't know if it's doing enough damage to get it into A tier, or if it's we're gonna put it high B. It has some nuances if you're playing a pug group where you don't know exactly what they're gonna pull and you don't know where to use your cooldown. So a little bit there, not crazy. But again, it still cranks damage. Good enough right now. It's not what it used to be in Dragonflight, because Dragonflight, it was the top Warlock spec in most cases. Sometimes Destro pulled ahead on massive pulls, but that's what Destro does. And we might as well just get Destro out of the way now too, because it's right here with the Warlock utility. And because of the ease of play, Destro is a very simplistic spec. There's not a lot of nuances to it. You don't have to count your imps and how many casts they have left and all that, and min-max your implosion. Destro can definitely go in front of Demo. They're still good, and like it's so close between B tier and bottom A. Uh, yeah, it's just really close. Now, here's one that everyone's probably going to chew on because Devastation Evoker can do crazy damage. It brings some deep, pretty good utility. It can crank out damage. Um, but where do I put it? The range can sometimes get you as a range spec. The 30 yards is kind of an in between. It's really weird. Sometimes you need just a little bit longer, and the fact that you have to hard cast a bunch of abilities also brings it down. But in the right situations, it blasts damage. Ooh, this is a tough one. This is a tough one. Yeah. You know what? We're just gonna put it right here. We're gonna put it there. Top of B. The rage limitation, I think, in some situation, with a lot of the movement that some M plus dungeons have, not all of them, some, is going to limit some of the damage output on it. Ellie Shaman. Oh, they are blasting. Ellie Shaman is doing really well after the rework. They bring probably the most utility out of any range class possible because they have the Shaman utility. They're I don't want to say they're the easiest range to play by any means. They're definitely on the harder end. I just don't know how far on the scale they get up there. They might be top. They're upper echelon of the hardest to play. You got a lot of abilities to manage and a lot of utility to manage, but Ellie Shaman, I don't. Ellie Shaman's got to get up there. It's got to just the damage it can do, and yeah, the utility it can bring. It brings everything, literally everything with a totem. You know what? We're gonna clutter the S specs here, and we're gonna put it up there. Fire Mage. Fire Mage is really easy to rank right now because they nerfed the shit out of Living Bomb. It does not good damage. It brings a mage utility, which is great, but it is down in the dumpster right now compared to what it was. Mind you, it was top tier for a lot of times, and usually when new expansions come out, it has a tendency to be really bad until they buff it and it goes right to the top. So take this with a grain of salt. Currently C, potentially A in about a month. We'll leave it at that. Usually Blizzard buffs them and away they go. It might take a couple months actually, but usually they climb up pretty quick. Frost. Frost. Oof, Frost is tough. Frost is an easier spec than Arcane. But if your tank keeps pulling consistently moving, then Frost is not good because then it moves out of the orbs, moves out of everything, and you're still trying to catch up and play. But most tanks don't do that in 0 to 15s, and it's just annoying. Most tanks know if they have a Frost Mage that they can't do that. But Frost Mage cranks too. I want to. It's not an overly complex spec. Brings huge utility. I don't know if I want to. I'm gonna put it in front of Arcane. Most times you won't have the issue of your Frost Orb going off because most tanks in 2 to 15s don't just keep running around, pulling and running and running and running. So I'm gonna put it in front on that assumption. Now, Marksman Hunter. Marksman Hunter is doing great damage. Marksman Hunter doesn't bring the most utility, but it brings a good amount of utility. Like it's not the weakest, it's not the best. It's kind of mid pack for utility. Now it is definitely here if your tank will pull to your cooldowns. It is definitely A tier. If the tank kind of when you use cooldowns on a small pack goes and sends a big pack right after, not so much. But currently, it does really good damage. It does more than BM right now. Yeah, you know what? We're gonna leave it here. Some people will figure it out. It might drop down, but it's gonna go A tier. Definitely A tier. Damage, good damage, decent utility, fairly simplistic spec, not as simple as Beastmaster. Beastmaster, everyone can crank on Beastmaster if you take about 5 minutes to figure out which buttons to hit. That is all. It doesn't have a lot. You can cast them on the move. You don't have to worry about anything. Still brings the same hunter utility, which is good. Mid tier. You still have Turtle, all the defensives. They actually gave you 2 survival defensives, I believe, now. So they got a little more defensive. The damage is not as good, but the potential damage to maximize is easiest on Beastmaster, if that makes sense. So if Marksman Hunter, average player is only going to get about 85% of the damage out, Beastmaster, average player is going to get about 90 or whatever it would be, 95, something like that. Like, it's very easy to maximize Beastmaster's damage versus other classes. One, because you don't have to worry about, stopping to cast. That's one of the major things. And 2, it's a pretty simplistic rotation. So you can maximize damage out of that. And because of that, I'm just going to split the Warlock specs and put it right here. I know people are going to argue on that one, but it's because you can maximize damage. Even if the damage is lower, you can still get more out of it. Easier than any other spec. Augmentation Evoker. Now, if you watch every other meta tier list, they're just going to put it up here, here. It, in keys that are 2 to 15, Augmentation I don't think is that good. One, people in 2 to 15s aren't min-maxing everything, so that's a big problem. 2 to 15s, it's not hugely necessary. 3, the damage loss is quite substantial between any other spec. It's not the best surviving spec in the game. It does have huge utility. Yes, absolutely, it has huge utility, and that's what they are. But you really need to min-max your specs and your ones you're bringing and everything, and the timing of everything. And most times, you're probably not running into a great Augmentation Evoker. Probably good enough to get by, but they're probably not great. So, knowing that, and yes, load it up in the comments that you think I'm wrong and you need it. You don't really need Augmentation. And I didn't even know in hierarchies if the defensive is now going to be worth the loss in DPS that you're going to get or not. I know some numbers on the beta were pretty high for Aug, but I don't foresee that lasting as they got the nerfs. But we're going to put it B tier. So enjoy that. Everyone can comment on that and how you think I'm going to be wrong. But this is, remember, 2 to 15 keys. So enjoy the Aug in the B. Shadow Priest. Shadow Priest got some pretty nice buffs the last little bit. Shadow Priest brings some okay utility. Sucks that Mass Dispel got nerfed hard in Dragonflight. The PI still is good. They have a kind of a long cooldown for fear and everything. But we are going to put with the damage. It is harder to play and get right for Shadow Priest, but it is definitely an A tier spec. It is definitely cranking still, definitely doing some good damage, and you can still bring PI and buff some other people. That is my range tier list for 2 to 15 keys, or 0 to 15 keys, or just up to 15 keys. If you have any questions on it, leave a comment below. Let me know what you think. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you in the next video.